The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, folks. We're going to start the webinar here in about 30 seconds just to allow for any last-minute attendees to join. So we will be starting here shortly. Thank you. Okay.
All right.
Well, hello and welcome to today's webinar on eProcurement integration with cXML PunchOut, which is actually part of the PageDNA product information series. I'm your host. My name is Amy Lighthizer. I recently joined PageDNA as a customer success manager, and I do have a lot of experience in the printing software industry. Many of you may have worked with me already, so welcome. I'm also joined today by Steve Enstad, our CEO, and David Dom, the head of our education and training. And David is also our cXML integration specialist. Today's webinar is actually part of a regular series highlighting the key capabilities of the PageDNA platform. And really our goal is to go beyond just the features in order to make sure that you understand really the business benefits of those features. And in order to keep up to date on the future webinars, please send an email to info@pagedna.com and our team will make sure that you're all set up. Now, before we get started, we also wanted to make sure that you all know that our website actually has a features and benefits section that will help you to learn more about the functionality and the benefits of that functionality that is available to you. And you'll see that there's a website address here on this page, along with a QR code that you can actually scan to go to that page more quickly. Now, today's presentation will be about 15 minutes long or so. The session is being recorded and we will provide you a copy of that recording later on. Now, we also please encourage that you do ask questions throughout the webinar, or you can wait until the end for our Q&A session. You are all muted during this webinar, so you can actually type your questions into the questions section of the GoToWebinar menu bar, or you can raise your hand by selecting that hand icon, and then we will unmute you during that Q&A section. Now, don't worry, that part of the webinar is not going to be recorded, so please don't be shy and ask those questions. All right, so now I'm going to pass the baton over to Steve to talk about the goals of today's presentation.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you all for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about this e-procurement trend that is really on the upswing and why it matters to you. We're going to talk about the cXML PunchOut, which is an integration that allows PageDNA software to tie into those e-procurement systems. Then we're going to talk about how we support those, and then how to engage with us if you do have a e-procurement integration in hand or coming soon. So let's start at 30,000 feet. What are these e-procurement systems? What they are is a networked platform that streamlines the buying process, both for the people who are buying and critically for the purchasing teams. And these systems are really ramping up in popularity. We've signed 2 SOWs in the past 3 days for these, including a new e-procurement system that we hadn't heard of before. We get a lot of inquiries about these, and we actually land a lot of new accounts that are interested in this integration. I want to make sure everyone's clear that this is not something that you would necessarily choose to do as a production print team. Rather, the CFO or the purchasing team at a large or medium-sized corporation will typically make the decision to move in this direction. And when they do so, you will be brought this opportunity. They will come to you and say, hey, we are moving in this direction. Would you like to be a part of it? Now, PageDNA has a couple different types of customers. We have the internal print shops. These are print shops that are not print for pay, but work inside of larger organization to do printing. And for those customers and prospects, we want you to know that your organization may decide to move in this direction, and they may already be moving in that direction. And if so, you may be required to participate as an internal supplier. For those in the print for pay world, large end user customers, as you're going to hear, are definitely moving in this direction. And to quote the famous Wayne Gretzky You want to skate to where the puck is going. And so it's very important for you to know that if you don't have the ability to integrate with these systems, you may be eliminated from doing business either with your current customer or with a prospect. So in summary, this is a really, really important trend that's on the upswing. And it's definitely the future. This trend is not going to slow down or go away. So we think it's really important for you to invest some time as you are to learn about this. So thank you again for joining us. These are the most common e-procurement systems, and we've integrated with all of these platforms. Most people are aware of some of these names on the screen, like Oracle, SAP, Ariba, but all of these are popular, and we integrate with all of them today. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we even have a new logo that we're going to add to this list here very shortly after we complete our integration with yet another e-procurement system. Some of these are large publicly traded companies, some of these are private companies, and some of these are actually print distributors that use the standard you're about to learn about. Now, as I mentioned, this is growing quickly, and about half the logos you just saw, we hadn't heard of 5 years ago. So it's growing quickly, and if you have a name of a system that's not on the list, no problem, reach out to us. The good news is that if these systems use the standard called cXML, which you're about to learn about, we can probably integrate with them, and often do meet new systems, and it's just fine. If you're curious as a current customer, you can search for this term cXML in our documentation, and you'll find a current list of all the systems we integrate with at this moment. Also, if you do have a new system, we ask you to reach out to us as soon as possible at sales@pagedna.com, and we'll help you out. So let's get to the what is this? Why does it matter part of the meeting here today. What the procurement systems do is they create a single large catalog that spans all of the vendors, internal or external. And it allows a person ordering to go in and place a single order for multiple different vendors' products, all in a single session. So this example here is a pretty common one. A requester inside of a large corporation wants to order a business card. They go in and they order that, and you, in this example, produce that product. But they also want to order some pens, some paper. They may even want to order a video projector for their office, and they may want to even order the services to install that from facilities management. They can do that all at the same time in a single shopping basket or order. So in this particular scenario, that decreases the amount of work for the person buying by at least 4 times. Because instead of logging into each system disparately and having to put in a purchase order number or grab a credit card or whatever they're doing, they do it all at once. But the real benefit to these systems are actually to the procurement teams, to the purchasing team, and to the CFO. And that person's office is the one, again, normally making the decision to move in this direction. For the purchasing team, they get a heads-up display that manages all of their purchasing and billing. Now imagine not just having 4 different vendors, but having 400 different vendors. And imagine the amount of work that goes into accounts payable, accounts receivable, invoicing. Did we ship it? Did we get paid? Or did we pay that vendor? There's a lot of touches in the buying process. And so this actually improves the efficiency of buying for everyone, but primarily the purchasing team. It also gives them control, because they have the ability to choose who can buy and who can spend what. Whereas normally, again, that's handled in all these different systems. It's now in a central consolidated system. So it's a really important part of them getting control over their spend. And that's why people make the substantial investment in moving in this direction. These systems can cost millions of dollars to install, so it's a big deal. Well, we all know, working in the world of print, that print is pretty unique. We're not just handling items that have a quantity and a description. We have to configure and proof and typeset and do a lot of other things with these items. And so PageDNA is actually a part of the creation of the standard you're about to learn about. We were part of the original 30 suppliers in 1999 that worked with Ariba. And Ariba pioneered a standard you're about to learn about. And the challenge that was brought up in this meeting was Ariba came into the room and said, we are going to handle everything. All of your customers are going to buy their stuff through us. And my customer, who I was with at that time, a commercial printer, raised their hand and said, okay, how are you going to handle business cards? And there was silence. Then another vendor, an office furniture company, raised their hand and said, we have 10 million products that can be configured in 30 trillion different combinations. How are you going to allow customers to order our stuff? And again, there was silence. At the end of that meeting, they said, we're going to think about this, and we're going to get back together in a few months. And we did rejoin in a few months, and they announced the solution to this challenge, which is called cXML PunchOut. Ariba created a new standard called cXML, which stands for Commerce XML, and it's a structured data format that allows business-to-business systems to talk to each other on a machine level. It allows customers to punch out and configure a print item and then return back into the eProcurement system. So the customer gets all the benefits of eProcurement and also continues to enjoy the benefits of using PageDNA to configure these items. And here's the definition from Ariba. Now, Ariba created the cXML standard, but it has actually become the industry standard for this type of interaction. So even Ariba, now owned by SAP, even their competitors are using the same language to interoperate. So cXML is now the way to go. And for those of you who've been around for a while, you may have heard of other formats of business-to-business interactions like EDI. EDI dates back to the early days of the automotive industry and has been and is being replaced by these more modern standards like cXML. As I mentioned, we were there when this was created, but there's more of PageDNA's legacy involved in the creation of cXML. We were actually the world's first ever publicly demonstrated PunchOut. In 1999, at the first user conference for Ariba, a Fortune 100 technology company demonstrated punching out, configuring a business card, and then returning to Ariba in front of the entire group. And it was a moment of great pride for us. Since then, we've done this dozens and dozens of times. And by the way, that integration for that particular customer is still live today, which shows the longevity of integrating with these systems. In other words, this can really strengthen your relationship with a buying organization by being part of their world and complying with their goals for increased efficiency. So we're going to keep this really simple here and explain how this works. A user who is inside of the eProcurement system over here on the left side chooses an item that has been designated as a PageDNA punch-out item. And at that point, they punch out and they go over the line here into the blue box, which is PageDNA, and they do their various steps of configuring the item, proofing the items, and so forth. And then they punch back into the e-purchasing system, sending the PageDNA order data. So all the information is going back into eProcurement. The user then completes their order within the world of eProcurement. Now, we've tried to make this as simple as possible for today's presentation because this is really a high-level presentation. But now we're going to tiptoe over into the expert corner and show you that there's a lot more involved potentially in these integrations than we're going to cover today. Just to explain a little bit here, there's other things you can do once the user punches in. They can either punch in and configure a single item or even go into a whole catalog and order multiple items. Don't need to worry about that today because we handled that in the implementation process. But we just wanted you to know there's actually a lot more behind the scenes, and different systems have different capabilities, and we're aware of those differences. So before the integration, as I mentioned, we really want you to bring this to us as soon as possible. Whether you're a prospect or a current customer or a partner of ours, just reach out to our sales team. I know this email address, sales@PageDNA, might seem a little generic, but actually that email address is linked directly to our CRM and make sure that somebody will respond quickly. We commonly will get together with you and your buying team and actually make everybody very comfortable because we've done this so many times. It's actually pretty typical that we get into a meeting and the purchasing team thinks that we're not going to know what we're talking about. And within about 10 or 15 minutes, they're like, oh, I guess the meeting's over. These guys know what they're doing, these guys and girls. So we're happy to be a part of this process before you spend a dime on this integration with us. As I mentioned, these integrations are not all the same, so it's really important that we get talking to you as soon as possible. And one of the things that our sales team is trained on is actually asking a lot of probing questions that will help us walk all the way around this integration and make sure that there's no stone that hasn't been flipped over. We then actually build a statement of work, and that statement of work document includes a very crisp definition of what this is, what it is not, what PageDNA does, what your responsibilities are. It's really important that we all sign that document so we're all clear on what's going to happen next, because this is truly a multi-party integration that involves a lot of moving parts, and we all need to know what our roles are in this activity. I'm going to pass this now to David. Take it away, David.
Thank you, Steve.
Welcome.
So the question is often asked, how long does one of these integrations take? And the average is about 3 to 4 weeks. The fastest we've seen done is 1 day, which is very unusual, and also the outliers, which can take much longer. And that is usually due to the problem getting technical resources on your customer's end. And so it's important that we have a technical person on your customer's end who's knowledgeable and can configure the eProcurement system to integrate with PageDNA. And so they have to have administrative rights, and there's usually more than one person that's involved on your customer's end to configure the eProcurement system. Additionally, your catalog may need to conform to the needs of the eProcurement system in sending an identifier for each of the items. So ordinarily, storefronts are configured to prevent any orders from not being placed within the eProcurement system. It is possible to allow non-eProcurement orders, but this can cause some billing problems and should be discussed between us and you and your customer. Additionally, site administrations always have access to the storefront, to the PageDNA storefront, and can place orders when needed.
Sorry, I went to the slide a little early there, David. This is the next slide. My apologies.
Oh, no problem. So the way eProcurement works, cXML PunchOut, is that there are a number of messages. There are 4 messages that are sent between the 2 systems. And the final message is the one that has the approval, essentially. And this is approval outside of the PageDNA approval feature. And it has this last message has the purchase order number that you will need to use in order to do the billing. Now, until we receive the purchase order number from the eProcurement system, that order will remain on a status of cXML hold until we receive it. Now, rarely, it's rarely done, but we can also implement approval after we've received the purchase order from the eProcurement system. And so you can use the PageDNA site's approval feature additionally outside of the eProcurement system. So once established, as Steve mentioned, these storefronts tend to last a long time. It solidifies your relationship with your customer, and your customers tend to stick around. And so I hope to have an opportunity to be able to work with you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
As David was mentioning, a lot of the processes that are normally handled in and outside eProcurement system, like billing and approvals, those actually move up into the eProcurement system. So for example, in a standalone PageDNA digital storefront, normally we would either request a purchase order number, or a credit card to secure payment. But in many cases, we don't handle that at all. It's all handled upstream in the eProcurement system. So the irony is that we're actually using fewer of the PageDNA interfaces to handle these orders, but that relates to the nature of eProcurement. It's taking control of a lot of those processes and moving them upstream into an organized, concerted process. To summarize, this is a very mature technology. The standard has been around since 1999 and is dramatically increasing in popularity. We have a very well-defined process to support you, and we hope to have a chance to do that with you. We want to make sure you're clear that you're in good hands with us when it comes to eProcurement, and we're looking forward to working with you on these types of projects. As I said as well, there's an increasing number of these types of systems. And if you have a system you want our platform to talk with or integrate with, please reach out to us, because the cXML standard is really becoming the standard, and we're ready to work with that standard with your partners. So this is the end of the recorded part of the webinar. We're going to pause here so we can stop the recording. And I want to mention to everybody